So our second article today will be presented by Anton Siebert from the University of Newcastle in the UK and Ahir Gopaldas from Fordham University. And this research examines customers' experience with leisure brands such as CrossFit, Pokemon Go, and Tinder. And the authors are going to share research that examines what works well for these types of brands and how marketers should think differently about the nature and management of the customer journey. So welcome, Anton and Ahir.
Well, thanks, Chris, and hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the problem of how to keep customers returning again and again. And that's a problem for both instrumental services on the left, such as Amtrak, Citibank, and MedPlus, and leisure services on the right, such as the ones that Chris just mentioned, CrossFit, Pokemon Go, Tinder. So we think there are at least two models that can help managers keep customers coming back again and again, based on our research on customer experience journeys. Now, these models are the smooth and the sticky model. The smooth model of customer journeys is the dominant one in marketing, and many of you will probably be familiar with a version of this model. It's about making customer experiences consistent and predictable. And it works well in instrumental services where customers typically want to get jobs done, like traveling smoothly from A to B. In contrast, in our own research on customers' journeys with leisure brands, this reveals a pretty different model, which we call the sticky journey model. Here, it's all about making customer experiences mad fun, or so thrilling that customers yearn to continue their journeys forever. This model works well in leisure services, such as CrossFit, Pokemon Go, and Tinder, which are our research contexts. CrossFit is an incredibly popular and fast-growing group fitness brand. Pokemon Go is an augmented reality mobile game that took the world by storm in 2016 and still is one of the most played and profitable mobile games. Tinder is the most used dating app in the US, the UK, and many other countries around the world. We interviewed 40 customers, spent at least a year using each of these services and taking field notes of our observations, and collected a lot of secondary data. And we used all that data to develop a model of sticky journeys. Now, to understand how the dominant smooth and our sticky model work in comparison, we first need to establish a timeline for our framework. Now, in the framework, time moves from the bottom to the top. The initial service cycle describes the first time someone uses a service. Subsequent service cycles describe the second time and all the following times someone uses a service. And termination trajectories are the last few times someone uses a service. Okay, now on the left, you now see the smooth journey model. And I'd like to draw your attention, first of all, to its overall shape. Now, in this model, the initial cycle in purple at the bottom is broad. Subsequent cycles in blue in the middle are not as broad. And the narrowing of these cycles indicates customers decreasing time, effort, and involvement from a very deliberate beginning to a more routine or almost automatic continuation of the journey. And Ahir is now going to walk us through the details of the model using the example of Amtrak, which is a U.S. railroad company.
Right. So what marketers call the deliberate decision-making process is visualized at the bottom for you. And it begins with a trigger. So for example, I might get an invitation to a meeting in Washington, D.C., and I myself live in New York City. So I'll go through some sort of initial consideration and active evaluation of my various transport options. So it could be like a Delta flight, a Greyhound bus, or perhaps an Amtrak train. And then after I consider things like time and money and convenience, I'm going to make that highly deliberate initial purchase and have my first ride or initial consumption experience. Now, the goal of the company, in this case, Amtrak, is to provide decision support to me along this process and then make sure at every moment that I'm preferring Amtrak over the other options. And if Amtrak does its job well and the initial service cycle is wonderful, I'm going to enroll into what marketers have long called a loyalty loop. And as you can see, it's highly repetitive, and it's the same thing over and over again with less time, less effort. And the goal of the company now is streamlining, which means remove the pain points, make things as easy as possible, recall my details, and basically make the journey as smooth and easy and convenient and effortless for me as possible. Now, this does not go on forever. It can come to an end when there are loyalty weakening incidents. This could be that the Wi-Fi is no good, or the air conditioning is poor, or perhaps the Amtrak train is getting me there late. And in any of those cases, I might start thinking about re-entering that deliberate decision-making process and switching back to like Delta or Greyhound or some other transport option. Anton?
To bring back to the big picture, in our research, we were asking the question of how to keep customers returning again and again. And we've just seen how the smooth model creates consistent and predictable experiences, trying to make customers' lives as easy as possible. Now let's take a look at how the sticky model creates mad fun. The sticky model is now on the right in the framework. There's a lot of detail, but let me draw your attention first to the overall shape of the journey again. The journey here is a widening spiral. It has a narrow beginning at the bottom in dark orange and becomes increasingly wide across subsequent cycles in yellow. The broadening of the cycles indicates customers increasing time, effort, and involvement from what is usually a spontaneous beginning to an increasingly involved continuation. Here.
Right, I'm going to begin again with the initial service cycle, this time on the right. And what a quick spin is a customer having a moment of curiosity, either through word of mouth or advertising or watching some other customers use a service and saying, I want to try that. There's not a lot of decision making. I just want to try it for fun. And here's an example from our Tinder data. So Charles says, when Tinder first came out, I saw my mates play it, and I thought the idea of it was amazing in the sense that you literally just swipe, yeah, I think she's hot, or no, not for me. I was like, all right, let's see what the hype's about. This is definitely a game changer. And then during the quick spin, the goal of the company in the pink box is rapid entry. And rapid entry is exactly what it sounds like. It is the firm trying to make sure that the moment the customer becomes curious or interested, that they provide as quickly as possible, ASAP, a taste of that service, a taste of the excitement. Anton, what happens next?
So after customers have an exciting quick spin, they tend to get swept up in what we call an involvement spiral. Now let me draw your attention to the two components of the involvement spiral on the left side of the yellow box. First, the experiential roller coaster, which is the squiggly line set against the yellow ribbon. This describes the moment-to-moment, unpredictable, almost chaotic experience that customers have as they live through moments of fun and disappointment, anticipation, even dread, and thrill about not knowing what's going to come next, and so on. Now, when customers are on these roller coaster rides, they are in a state of high psychological arousal, and they become highly attuned to the details and the intricacies of the service experience. And they almost can't help but invest time and energy and focus on learning about those details, about their own experiences, about how to do things differently, and how to become better at using a service. In other words, their experiential involvement increases. Now, an example of a roller coaster from our Tinder data is Anna's description of what it's like to swipe through Tinder. And that's on the next slide. Yep, right there at the bottom. So Anna says for her, swiping through Tinder is like you see tall man, small man, fat man, thin man, poor man, rich man, doctors, gardeners, and everything. You really see a big cross-section of society, and that was super exciting. And keep in mind that Tinder shows these profiles one after the other, so you don't even know what's coming next. Okay, Enrico's quote illustrates increasing experiential involvement that he has from using Tinder over time, from his naive start to becoming a more seasoned user. Enrico says, the first match, you say, hi, how are you? And the conversation goes on. But then you feel greedy and you're nonstop until you reach the second match or third or fourth. And then you start having 5 conversations at the same time. And then you try to select a few that you really think are the good catches. So over time, he says, I became more mature in the use of the app. Firms can facilitate involvement spirals by providing what we call endless variation across the customer journey. That's in the pink box at the top. Now, endless variation means three things, at least. First, have an expansive service system. Tinder, for example, has a huge pool of potential matches. They literally have millions of users who are active daily. Second, constant changes to that service system. The pool of Tinder users is constantly changing as new users sign up, others take breaks and then reappear or disappear forever. And then Tinder introduces new features as well, new subscription plans, new ways to check out profiles, or changes to how these profiles are shown to others. And third, and we believe that's most important based on our research, providing a unique configuration of those elements at every service encounter. Tinder deliberately uses what they call an open algorithm, not an algorithm based on input from compatibility questions or other measures that tries to only find your top 10 most compatible matches. Instead, using this kind of open algorithm, Tinder provides new, uncategorized, surprising user profiles every time someone logs onto the app. And also, Tinder allows matched users to communicate pretty much as they wish within certain bounds on their messaging channel. And that adds another source of exciting unpredictability to the Tinder journey. Okay, Ahir, what happens next?
Right, so involvement spirals also come to an end sometimes. And what's interesting is it's not loyalty weakening incidents. So bad experiences are not the problem. You can have a really bad date on Tinder and still continue using the app because that's part of the mad fun. What really does tend to stop involvement spirals is what we call well-being concerns. And that's when the involvement spiral is paradoxically working all too well, people start to feel addicted to the app or the service, and they start worrying, am I obsessed with this? I'm doing it in the morning, I'm doing it at night, I'm doing it all the time. Here's a quote from one of our informants, Sophia, and she says, it's very addictive. I would spend a lot of time. It was an addictive game. So in order to stop using it, at some point, I just deleted it. Now, quitting cold turkey or sudden withdrawal is common, but some informants also gradually withdraw. Now, at this point, we've shown you our the smooth journey model on the left and the details of the smooth journey model on the right. And what we're going to do now is pause for your questions.
Thank you, Ahir and Anton. Very interesting. Again, we'd love to have your questions. If you want to type those into the Q&A tab, that would be great. And so let me go ahead and start with a question that we have, which is, can you clarify a bit more why and when we should use this kind of smooth versus sticky journey model? Because you have both of them in play, and I think I see the difference, but do you think you could clarify a little bit more about when they would each be appropriate?
Sure. Yeah, let me take that question. And here, can you jump to a slide that compares the two models? I think that, yeah. We have that in the paper as well, a similar table. So the smooth journey model on the left, again, is ideal for instrumental service categories. And this includes everything from banking to work apparel. And what these services tend to have in common is that their customers have jobs to be done. They want to achieve something very specific, and they kind of hire a brand to help them do that. And once customers have made a good hiring decision that they're satisfied with, they tend to be loyal to one brand. Like, for example, customers do their daily banking or their investments typically with one bank. They always go to the same business hotel, likely using a loyalty card, collecting miles or something else. And they have one insurance company. In contrast, what we find is that the sticky journey model is ideal for leisure services. And this can include everything from content networks to music discovery services. And what these services have in common is that their customers seek never-ending adventures. Rather than wanting to get a specific task done, like what is jobs to be done all about, customers here, they seek fun and excitement. They want to discover new things, be entertained. And they often juggle multiple brands, even in the same service category. For example, people don't just use one content network, but nowadays they've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other accounts that I don't know about because I'm getting too old for this. Many people use Tinder, Bumble, and other dating apps at the same time. And people tend to watch several dramatic serials, like often switching from, say, Game of Thrones to Killing Eve and back. At least that's what Ahir and I did while writing this paper. I hope that clarifies the question.
That does. That's super helpful. We are getting a lot of questions about the applicability of the models to different settings. For example, Amazon, cruise ship, pharma. I think people want to know: is there a way to do some of these categories naturally fit into the smooth model, or can we think about making? Is it possible to think about making some of these things that maybe are kind of boring and uninteresting, that we can turn them into to more of this mad fun that you find in the sticky journey? What do you think?
Anton, should I take that one?
Yeah, take that one here.
Yeah, so I think, the Amazon example is a really good one because Amazon's not quite a single service company so much as an economy that provides, literally hundreds of services to customers. So I think what would be applicable is to show one of the things the reviewers asked to do is, how you combine multiple loyalty loops and multiple involvement spirals, right? So what you're looking at is 6 sort of interconnections. And if you look at panel A, that's probably the simplest example where, the existing loop is you using, going to Starbucks every morning, for example, and getting a cup of coffee, a basic cup of coffee. And then Starbucks often wants to try to make part of that habit this parallel loyalty loop of getting a breakfast sandwich as well, right? So that's a fairly simple one. Here's a slightly more complex one where Starbucks might see that a customer gets a cup of coffee every morning, and then through the app on your birthday, it provides you with, for a couple days, you're going to get a free upgrade to any sophisticated beverage of your choice just for the price of a basic coffee. So the customer maybe has a little bit of mad fun in that loyalty loop. So they try a latte, a flat white, a caramel macchiato, a matcha latte. They try a whole bunch of things. And then the hope is that Starbucks customer returns and restabilizes into a loyalty loop that's a little bit more sophisticated. Maybe they get a latte every morning. And then if we look at one example from the bottom, where you're starting off with a basic involvement spiral, maybe a good example from our data is the CrossFit data. So the CrossFit journey is very much like an involvement spiral where people get more and more into it. People have called it a cult because people become obsessed with CrossFit. Well, there's also a loyalty loop in a lot of CrossFit gyms. When you check out of that constantly varied, exciting workout, a lot of the customers just simply get a smoothie on their way out. And that smoothie is not changing every day. It's a very stable menu. It's very much a loyalty loop. So the benefit of having multiple loops and spirals in a multi-service system like Amazon is that you're getting multiple revenue streams and you're also doing a better job of retaining the customer.
That's super helpful because we are getting questions about the combination of these two. We're also getting questions about the types of people that you interviewed. And I wanted to clarify that you did interview and do some depth work across all 3 of these categories, Pokemon or products, Pokemon Go, Tinder, and CrossFit. There was a question very early on that I thought was important just to clarify, which is Khalid asks about this idea of the lived experience. And he asks, is there a connection between kind of this phenomenological view and this idea of lived experience? Why did you approach it this way? Why not just do a standard kind of set of experiments and surveys to get these insights? Why did you make this choice, and what do you think it yielded you?
Well, that's a great question, and it goes back to 30, 40, 50, probably more years even. I'm thinking of the Holbrook and Hirschman paper on the experiential dimension of consumption, and so the long history that a focus on customer experiences has, and is how this is embedded in phenomenological or also ethnographic work. And we really thought that we can only get these in-depth accounts from consumers if, first of all, we get input from those consumers, which means that could be through interviews, observations, or also quantitative means of data collection. But we're really interested in how do these journeys evolve? What are people's interpretations? What do they believe are the key moments? What are the patterns that we see over time? And we thought by collecting qualitative data and different types of qualitative data, we could best get to that core of these experiential and these journey patterns going on in consumers' lives, really. I don't know. Ahir, do you want to add anything
Yeah, I
to
was just
that?
looking at Khaled's question. I think, one of the things is that the importing of phenomenological research on customer experiences was already imported into CXM. Like if you look at a lot of the basic CXM literature, the ground floor, well before our paper, they imported a lot of that phenomenological knowledge into kind of the CXM theory base. And so by the time we've entered this conversation, which is, 2020, there's several JM papers prior to ours that has sort of said, the key thing that we need to focus on is this flow of lived experience. So not a momentary experience, but the flow of experience over time. And some of the early work looked at the flow like in the initial service cycle or, through the purchase process. What we're really emphasizing in the paper, building on some other work, is, well, the journey, can happen over months, years, sometimes even decades. And are there some ideal forms and shapes that, we can find from our data? So we're presenting two. I think it's important to say is that neither Anton or I or our co-authors think this is the end of the conversation. In fact, our main purpose was to say, we're a little too obsessed with this loyalty loop idea in the CXM space, but there might be other models, and we've come up with one other model. But, the back end of our paper is really welcoming lots of research on lots of different types of journey models. So anyone interested in the space should absolutely, use their questions. And I'm seeing a lot of questions about, boundary conditions. There are absolutely some journeys out there in the world that neither of these models might capture. And that could be a great opportunity, for your next JM paper.
Excellent. And I think the concepts, even if the whole journey isn't relevant to some industries or some companies, some of the concepts that you uncovered and that you introduced, I think, are so useful. We did get, just jumping off in one direction, there are a couple questions. Tanya's worried about, or she asks about, the customer dissatisfaction that comes with sticky journeys. And Ian asks about, the adverse effects of the chaotic and unpredictable service. Maybe you could come back to those well-being concerns and give us a little bit more of a flavor for what's going on there and what companies can do to resolve those well-being concerns.
So I can give you a concrete example from our CrossFit data on how companies can kind of, tone down a little the intensity of what they're actually offering. So for some CrossFit athletes, the intensity and the unpredictability and the involvement spiral becomes too much, and then they're overwhelmed. They go to CrossFit maybe at the beginning 2 times, but then 5 times, 6 times, and it conflicts with other priorities that they have in their lives, and they don't see any other option but to just quit, either suddenly or gradually, right? I remember one informant saying that, he would get really addicted and he wanted to go every day, but then he would develop back pain and he wouldn't feel well anymore. And so his coach actually told him, take a break. I don't want to see you in the gym for a week. Come back after that week. You'll be better off. You'll be fitter, and you'll be fine to get going again. So that sort of sensitivity or mindfulness toward what's going on inside the experiential world of the customer is really valuable. But at the same time, it's easier said than done to really tease out where the customer is at. And in a setting such as CrossFit, that's easier than, let's say, for some online services. Well, at the same time, in online services, you could maybe measure engagement and then maybe send the customer a reminder of, do you want to take the weekend off? You seem to be really engaged in this. Anyway, Ahir, what are your thoughts?
So, well, actually, we just have about 1 more minute, so I wanted to let everybody know that this TJ will post the link to this article in the studio chat. Both of these presentations will be made available on demand within a couple days. But lastly, you guys, which of these journeys, makes more money? I know you don't have a lot of quantitative data, but just your sense, maybe in just about 30 seconds, which makes more money, or how should practitioners think about that?
Well, that's a great question. And yes, we're on the right slide. So I'd like to draw your attention to the green dollar signs. And well, basically, you can make a lot of money with each of these models over time. But the secret to maximizing revenue is the timing of promoting premium service plans and other purchases. In the smooth model, a secret is to promote premium plans in the initial service cycle because customers are already in a deliberate decision-making process. But don't bother them too much in the loyalty loop, or else they might start an entirely new decision-making process and consider your competitors' deals or other offers. In the sticky model on the right, the secret is to do the exact opposite. Like, you want to give customers low cost or ideally free access to the service at the beginning as soon as possible. But when customers are caught up in the involvement spiral in later cycles, then you want to promote your plans and other purchases because that's when they're ready to invest and upgrade their plans.
Very interesting. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Anton and Ahir, for giving us the talk. Again, all of the materials will be available. We really appreciate the insights from your research. So thanks again.
Thanks so much.